As a design professional, like it or not, change is coming. You'll need to evolve your processes from analogue to digital. Clients are going to be more prescriptive of how you provide your deliverables. The question is, are you ready? Now let's begin our digital transition. So in terms of an agenda, it's going to be a very short presentation. It's only going to be about 15 minutes, but what we're going to do is just give you a bit of an eye-opener in terms of being able to undertake further research to understand what your practice actually needs. So first of all, we're going to talk about government policies. So government leading from the front end here and driving change within industry. We're going to talk about the current capabilities of industry and architects in particular through the results of the digital capability survey that was conducted at the start of last year. We're also going to talk about the transitioning process. How will you transition your business from an analogue business to a digital one? We're going to talk about ISO 19650. So it's a recently released ISO standard, which talks about the process of delivering projects. And we're going to talk about the BIM skills and knowledge framework. So all of these together, I guess, are the foundation stones to enable you to begin in your transition from an analogue to a digital one. So government policies. We're starting off up here in Queensland with the Digital Enablement for Queensland Infrastructure Principles and BIM Implementation Policy that was released in March 2018. This policy, I guess, is one of many, and I'll just touch on them briefly, that essentially are starting to drive change from analogue to a digital delivery methodology. Within this small policy, it's only about 5 pages long, quite a short read, quite easy to digest. You'll learn, it touches on a couple of different documents, which I'll talk about in a minute, but you'll see that government here is trying to lead from the front and guide industry to actually change. In New South Wales, we have the likes of Transport for New South Wales. We also have Health New South Wales also doing a lot of work, and then I believe Education New South Wales are also making a move forward with digital engineering in terms of the client taking control of what information they want delivered. Down in Victoria, we've got the VDAS, or the Victorian Digital Asset Strategy. This also recently, only a month or two ago, they had a huge event with Melbourne where they released the large suite of documents. It's actually available online, so you can go onto the website and see all of the information they've been trying to put forward in regards to that. All of these policies and documents refer to a number of other documents that are being released throughout industry and as standards. The first one is the ACIF APCC BIM Knowledge and Skills Framework. Other than that, we've also got ISO 19650.1 and ISO 19650.2. Now, I'll cover both of those in more detail shortly. Before beginning on any journey or any change management within industry or your own business, you need to have an understanding, first of all, where you're actually up to in your current capabilities. Now, early in 2019, with the AIA and the ACA within the BIM task force, we put together a digital capability survey. Now, within this survey, we obviously asked a number of questions, but I guess one key kind of outcome, I guess, is this graph we have right here. Now, on this graph, I guess what we're seeing is the capabilities of clients that are actually asking for this currently across a series of different BIM deliverables that they may ask for. We'll see an area where architects are currently delivering it on projects, most of their projects where clients actually aren't requiring it. You've seen where they've done pilot projects, so they're currently doing, they've tested it out on a project, and we've also got conducting research or haven't done it at all. Now, the interesting insight in this is that depending upon the way in which you look at it, you could see that a number of architects are potentially being quite proactive. So you can see there in the kind of mild green, you can see that, on most of these areas, you can see a number of architects currently undertaking these steps. And from my perspective, I guess there's probably 3 key areas to look at. Now, the first area to look at is in regards to looking at spatial and material design modelling. Now, this is essentially the kind of process which you would use to generate documentation from your model at this point in time. So what you're seeing here is you're seeing about 43% of architects currently using that process to generate their documents. Now, that may be underdone because most people are using BIM authoring software at this point in time. But what you're seeing is that's kind of the first step. Then the second step that I kind of think is actually really important is understanding 3D coordination, because it's one thing being able to do the step yourself and modelling by yourself to generate your documents. The second step is actually working with your whole team of consultants to deliver a project in terms of model coordination and then understanding that kind of capability. So you can see that there is a slight drop off for that phase. You can see that 5% of clients, 5% of architects, their clients are asking for that on some projects, and 32% are actually doing that as part of their role anyway, because they want to produce greater coordinated outputs, I guess, at the end of their design and documentation processes. The area that I guess, there's two areas I guess that are kind of more important, I guess, is facilities management. So you can see there at the top of the graph, you can see that only 3% of architects have clients that are currently asking that for as a deliverable, and a much smaller portion are doing that off their own bat. Now there's a reason why architects probably won't go off and do this without clients asking for it, because it's not going to gain value for their organisation in terms of risk mitigation or saving them time and money. It actually costs more money. So what we're seeing is progressively a drop in the capabilities or what architects are currently working with as we step through each of those phases in terms of the steps of becoming more BIM capable. So after understanding where you're at within your digital transformation in terms of where you're sitting with your capabilities right now, you then need to look at your business as a whole, okay? And looking at your business as a whole, we need to look at it in a couple of ways. First of all, we need to look at it from the strategic level, then we need to look at it at the managerial level, and then we need to look at the technical level. Now, it's important that we look at it from all of these different angles, because if we choose to forget one of them or we skip one of them, the whole process or system could fall over. Now, the key thing we need to think about, first of all, is at a strategic level, what are the current deliverables of our current clients? And then we need to think at a strategic level, what are the potential deliverables of our potential clients in the future? Now, by thinking of it in both of these ways, you can set up processes and methodologies to respond to those, to meet your clients' needs for today, but also for the future. And there's no benefit in actually setting up processes that are for deliverables that you'll never actually deliver at all. So managerial. Once we've understood what our client is and what the deliverable potential will be, we then need to set in place our processes and tools to enable us to do that efficiently and effectively. We want to be able to come up with ways in which we don't have to do things manually, which is where we can use technology. And then we also want to utilise technology to then reduce risk of making mistakes. It's really, really important. And then finally, we need to take the technical level. What are the skills of our team? What are the skills of the people within our team? And that's really, really important, because you could have a really poorly skilled team. And if you have a poorly skilled team, if you've got very complex processes and tools, then they're not going to be able to use them. Or you may have a highly skilled team that you could transition a lot quicker. So you need to understand across all of those three levels before you make any of those jumps. So the key thing to think about overall, I guess, is what are your strategic goals of your organisation, right? And those strategic goals then need to be encompassed by your managerial system. So your systems need to embrace and support your strategic goals. Then on top of that, the technical skills of your team need to be able to be capable of being able to utilise the systems to meet your strategic goals. So it's quite an important process in setting all of that up. Now let's kind of delve into this in a little bit more detail. First of all, at a strategic level, what are the kind of key areas that we need to think about? Well, first of all, we need to think of our business purpose. What's the reason we're in business? Our business objectives. You know, what are the objectives of how we're going to deliver why is our business around? And initiatives that our business has in terms of how we're trying to move forward. So that together with the client type and the deliverables is the kind of fundamental thing you need to think of first and foremost when beginning this journey. Then there's a lot of costs associated with setting up processes and tools, okay? So we need to sit down and think about, well, what hardware do we need to support these new processes in place? How much will this hardware cost? Can we cash flow this new hardware investment? Or do we need to slow things down to enable us to be able to fund this throughout the whole process? We need to think of the different tools and software that we have. And as much as I'm a fan of ArchiCAD and I use that quite well as a base authoring tool, the number of tools that you will need in your BIM toolkit to meet our clients' requirements moving into the future will be significantly greater than just that one tool. We will need a suite of tools to do this. You need to think of the processes that support this. The processes that you have today will not be the same tomorrow. You need to think of new processes that align with these new standards and align with the client deliverable requirements to be able to be capable of doing this. Your team structure. You know, what we've seen with the change of BIM and introduction of BIM has changed forever the methodology in which some services engineers work. You know, is your team structure suitable for the type of project and the methodology that you're going to be using to deliver it? Thinking about the methodologies you have for quality assurance. They're going to be different moving into the future. Checking a set of drawings meant someone could manually look over them and check what's going on. But with a model environment, you're going to need different processes to understand and check that the information that's attached to modeled elements are actually accurate and correct. And then you're going to need a suite of templates. These templates are going to obviously be necessary to enable you to be streamlined in the way you work rather than reinventing the wheel each time that you do the project, a new project. Now, from a technical perspective, there's a couple of different angles you need to consider. First of all, and foremost, there's the number of years that someone's actually been within the industry. You know, if someone's been in the industry quite a long time, they've obviously got understanding and knowledge of how projects and buildings get built. You know, that kind of ties into professional registration. Is someone actually a professionally registered person that essentially industry deems capable of being able to deliver these projects without actually having to work for you, for example? It means that their knowledge levels are sufficient to be kind of, I guess, someone that could take on a major project by themselves without needing to work for yourself. Now, those type of things kind of tie into the BIM process experience, okay? So one of the things that BIM highlights is that the lack of knowledge or lack of construction knowledge that people may have because you're having to virtually build the whole building. Whereas in the past, using 2D workflows, you would only focus on delivering components that you're actually doing to produce your drawings rather than thinking of the whole model. So it's really important, first of all, to then understand the methodology of how you need to build a building virtually and in the right order, so therefore you're not wasting time and doing things in the wrong order. And then I guess finally, it's important to understand this as BIM tool experience. So yes, it's important, I think, to understand how capable people are of using the tools that they actually need to use to actually deliver their work. So that's really, really important. Now, the key thing is we've got to realise that within regards to all of this transitioning is that all of our clients aren't going to be cookie cutters. We're not going to be delivering the same for everyone. Now, all of those policies do bring up the NATSPAC National BIM Guide in terms of trying to talk about a guide that's important to work with. So within this guide, there are a number of different BIM uses that it highlights, and I produced this graphic here to kind of explain the different phases that those processes may occur, so that it kind of highlights, I guess, people's needs. Now, BIM isn't kind of a thing where you need to use and pick everything in one go, okay? So you got to remember that for any one project or any one client, there's possibly not a need for needing all of these sorts of things. And I guess an analogy I like to use with that is the concept of the Swiss Army knife. Now, for example, for a client to turn around and say, I'll just have BIM thanks and I'll have everything, you get this large Swiss Army knife, the large Swiss Army knife. It looks beautiful, it costs a lot of money, and you probably won't even use, 50-60% of the tools that are contained within it. Whereas, for example, if you look at the knives below that, there's 3 other options there, but there can be countless other options. And for a client's perspective, each individual client will be different. They will have different needs as we move forward. They won't want everything, they won't need everything. They will just need what's specific to their need for their project. So just remember that. The challenges we face today are that most people in business are reactionary instead of being proactive. And what people need to focus on is actually being proactive and moving forward and actually developing their skills beforehand. The challenges that we have here is that over on the side here we have a graph that I've used in presentations for a number of years where we talk about clients' BIM expectations. Now the problem is that if, as an organisation, if you try and respond to your clients' BIM expectations in the same speed that they have here on the graph, what you're going to find is that your business will not be able to be capable. You'll fall over and essentially might potentially go broke. It's very important that you need to begin your development soon rather than later. You need to have a team of people that can lead you and make sure that your capabilities and skills are going to be in line with what your clients' needs are. That needs to race ahead. And then the line of training and learning for your team needs to be at the pace in which your team are capable of learning. And you want to get to the end before your clients need it. You want to be the one that's capable of being able to deliver this service and say that you've been able to do it on a few projects before the client asks for it. It's the only way you're going to remain competitive, because otherwise your competitors will be the ones that have the skills and win the project ahead of you, because you don't have the capability or you haven't delivered it before. So it's really important to start sooner rather than later. Be proactive, don't be reactive, please. So ISO 19650. Now let's start, I guess, going back to what BIM really means. It isn't about technology. It really isn't about a tool or an authoring software. The key thing from my perspective is always thinking about it in this kind of light. From my perspective, it's actually about better information management. Okay, so better information management is the key in terms of solving a lot of the inefficiencies that currently exist within the AECO markets and industries. Okay, so you know what we got here is that ISO 19650.1, ISO 19650.2, really the role of that is the specification of information deliverables. So first of all, the client needs to kind of advise why they want information. And in doing so, they need to specify what information that they need. Okay, that's very important. Secondly, they need to specify when they need that information, because that information might be relevant for them to actually get a loan. It may be relevant for them to get funding. It may be relevant for them to get past a financial hurdle or other information that they need to enable them to make great business decisions. Then they need to advise how they need it. So what format's that information provided? It could be provided as a PDF, it could be provided as an Excel spreadsheet, it could be provided as a database in Dorofus, for example. And then they need to advise who they need it from. So the specific expert behind it that needs to deliver that information might be regulated so that they can get certain financing from their banks or financiers. Now moving, I guess, onto the process of what ISO 19650 is as a process. Now this diagram has been produced from Rob Jackson and Bond Bryan Digital over in the UK. It's available on his blog to download as a resource, but what it does is it clearly sets out all of the processes and steps that are made up of this ISO standard. So you got to remember, ISO 19650 really is just a process standard. It's identifying the process of delivering projects. Now that ISO standard is broken up into 8 sections: assessment and need, invitation to tender, tender response, appointment, mobilisation, creative production of information, information model delivery, and project closeout. So those 8 phases kind of almost align. I guess some of them sitting before architects are normally engaged or consultants are engaged, and then they work their way through to the end of the project. Now the difference, I guess, with this standard is that what we're seeing now is the client taking control of what information they require. Now, in the past, we've seen clients being quite in control through project managers or someone that's leading the project in highlighting and identifying the information that they need before they build a building and until they've actually constructed a building. They haven't been so clear on a lot more detailed standards so that what they get at the end of the construction phase is consistent and essentially meets their requirements, so that their systems and processes can be plugged into this when they're actually needing it at the end of their project. So it's really, really important to understand that. And finally, we have the BIM Knowledge and Skills Framework. Now, from my perspective, I think this is one of the most important components of all of this. It's actually about the skills and about people. So people being able to have the adequate skills to enable these processes to actually occur. And from my perspective, I think when you look at the skills that you need as a registered architect already, there's actually quite a lot of skills you need. When you look at this set of skills, and I'll go through them briefly in a moment, you'll see that the number of skills that the architect is going to need moving into the future are going to double. You know, it's just going to broaden the amount of knowledge that an architect's going to need to be able to deliver this. Now, in terms of the skill sets, they're broken up into 7 process groups, okay? So in terms of, let's understand how this all goes together. So it's in 7 process groups. Those process groups are then broken down further into 24 subgroups. And those 24 subgroups contain the 135 skills that make up this knowledge and skills framework. So 135 skills are quite a lot, okay? Now, those 135 skills are broken down, I guess, slightly more granularly again, into the sense that you've got to look at it from a strategic level, a managerial level, and a technical level. So depending upon each of those skills have a slightly different angle depending upon those different areas of expertise that are required. And then secondly, you need to have different levels of knowledge. So for example, a practice owner or a practice director wouldn't need to be an expert in some skills. They need to be an expert in some, but mainly some of them they may need to have fundamental awareness. So you can see here from a scale of 1 to 5 of the knowledge that's required by people within industry against each of these different these skill sets. Now we move on to an example, and this is a table that I created a year or two ago when I was trying to understand and assess how these skills relate to a design practice. So you can see here in the table, and my key thing that I always talk about, and the reason why I always talk about it is because, you know, practice owners think that they can just employ a BIM expert into their team and be done with it and not have to worry about it. But what this actually demonstrates is, for a business director, you can see there they're a strategic level person. Within their practice, they need to have a basic fundamental awareness of 51 of those 135 skills. And overall need to have an awareness of 70% of the skills, with needing to know 94 of the 135 skills, with an averaged out knowledge, I guess, of 26% of the whole thing, you know, if you look at the scale from 1 to 5. And then you're looking at people in the modelling and the documenting kind of role. So this is just every single person that's within the practice, essentially. They're going to need to know 121 of those skills, which is a huge number. So it's 90% of the skills, and have a 30% awareness. And obviously you got your BIM manager sitting there in the middle, right? And your BIM manager is the one that's obviously the person that's going to help guide your modelers and documenters on what to do. So they need to have more of a managerial and technical experience. But the scary thing also is then looking at your project directors and your project managers in terms of the people that are leading the projects within your practice. They're also needing to have a level of knowledge of 121 of those 135 skills, and sitting at 53% or 52% knowledge, you know, respectively. So it's a lot of things to take in. Now, alongside of this, I guess, is, you know, Building Smart Australasia. Building Smart Australasia have BIM creds as a methodology of testing. And thankfully I was one of the test pilots of their BIM creds program and successfully passed all of their technical, managerial and strategic quizzes. But I guess the key thing is that's the end point. That's knowing that you actually got the capability to perform that role. It's actually important to actually understand how you can get there. So from my perspective, I guess it's really important that you have a team of people that actually have the capability, depending upon their role, to achieve something similar to BIM creds. So in conclusion, I guess the key thing is to know from this short discussion today is that industry is moving. Clients are going to be requiring digital deliverables instead of analog ones. They're going to be more prescriptive about the information that they want delivered, which will mean that even though you may be using BIM processes today, you may need to adapt your templates and the processes that you're working currently to meet each individual client's needs. It's not going to be just a cookie cutter scenario where you can just use that one template you built to deliver all your projects for your clients. So that's a really key thing to do. So how do we learn more? So obviously there's different ways in which you can learn. So, you know, we have software vendors like Central Innovation that provide software training. Within my business Skewed, I ran a conference in February in 2020, and now that conference is available online. So Architensive for ArchiCAD users is now an online course. We have 12 sessions available where people can actually subscribe and actually get access to all of the videos and training material online. And then I have Skewed Academy. So Skewed Academy is more of a broad, customized training program venture. So it means that you come and sit down with me and we talk about what your company's strategic, managerial and technical areas, strengths and weaknesses are, and then I can set up a customised program either for you as an individual or as an organisation to enable you to be able to meet the client's deliverable requirements at a government level, say, or even if it's just a lesser cause. In any case, thanks very much for listening today, and if you need any further assistance in your digital transition, reach out to me and I'll assist you on your way. Thanks very much.